Hey guys, welcome back. I'm sure you must have heard about many kind of national projects that's going on in our country. Let it be in agriculture or environment or healthcare or education and whatever field. But Ravish has a different kind of national project to tell us today in the next chapter of his book, The Free Voice. So let's see. The title goes like the national project for installing fear. Now, as the name suggests, this project is all about installing fear in the mind of the common people. It's like a kind of messaging that goes to the general masses. So basically, he has given a few examples about a couple of attacks on a few journalists, and let's see what is there. So he talks about in the first part about the beating of a journalist named Basit Malik in Delhi, and in the second part he talks about the killing or the murder of Gauri Lankesh, and this is basically about the gatherings of journalists where he had participated, and these are these two essays are basically based upon the speeches that he had given there, right? So he says that this project has reached the completion in India. It is no longer the ongoing project, it has almost been completed. So he says that this project is now going on in a national scale, like it's a massive it's going on in a massive scale, and individuals comprise the smallest and the most vulnerable units, because now this project has even reached the newsroom, the news channels and the media organizations of this country. And he says that all this is happening systemically as part of the political game plan. This is happening very strategically, that's what he is saying. And there is another project which is an ongoing project, he says, and it is to convert every person into a mob, into a possible killer, and this project is ongoing as per Ravish. And this is based on, again as I said, they were there to show their solidarity with this journalist Basit Malik, and there was a gathering for after the killing of Gauri Lankesh. So he says particularly about Gauri Lankesh, and then he goes on to talk about M.M. Kalburgi, and then these two were in Karnataka, and then also about Narendra Davolkar and Govind Pansare, and these two murders were in Maharashtra. So he says that it's all being done by a particular kind of a mob which is completely brainwashed, which is filled with hatred and violence and propaganda and with fake news. He comes to that as well. I don't think it has ever happened anywhere that so many people have publicly justified a murder as vociferously and boldly and with so much poison as Gauri's was. So after Gauri Lankesh was killed, many of people were calling anything about her. Like, he has given also a few examples here. He particularly talks about Nikhil Dadhichi, who had a very derogatory tweet after Gauri Lankesh was killed, and he had also called Gauri a bitch. So the Dichi said that now that a bitch has died, a dog's death, all the puppies are mewling in one voice. I was disappointed in our Prime Minister, Ravish has to say, because this Nikhil Dadhich is being followed, or at least was being followed at that time, by the Prime Minister of our country, Narendra Modi. So he says it's like this mob have been granted power, these mobs have been granted the kind of, it's been legitimized by the people who are at the top of the authority. So he's saying that when he can barely, like, he talks about the propaganda that is very famously circulated by BJP IT cell. So he says that he has a question for the Prime Minister actually. Why do you follow Dadhij, this particular Nikhil Dadhij, who is being followed by the Prime Minister? So he says, I mean, what kind of a country is this where the Prime Minister is following people like Nikhil Dadhij? And I mean, it's quite disappointing. And then he says that somebody, after the death of Gauri Lankesh, somebody told Ravish that you would also face the same fate as her. And Ravish then says that it is deeply worrying and it's a very huge concern that people, this particular mobs are mobilized in such a way with a different kind of political ideologies, a different kind of political leaning. So whosoever has a different view other than theirs, they are targeted. And then people were also suggesting him to ask for security from the government and all these things he has narrated here. But then he goes on to say that a particular kind of political atmosphere has been created through the national project for installing fear, which offers divisive forces all kinds of support. It's very clear that all these people are being supported by the people who are in power, by the government itself, by the state machinery. Those who were laughing at the killing of Gauri Lankesh are a product of that particular atmosphere. And this is a shameful development. Then he says, at last he says that it was, he also gives the example of the two women who had spoken against Gurmeet Ram Rahim, who is now been convicted in rape case against these two women. So he says that this is the same section of the society which said nothing in support of the two women who spoke up against Gurmeet Ram Rahim. He says it was thanks to the battles waged by them, those two women, that the empire of such a powerful Baba was destroyed. But our society and the responsible people within it support the sentiment of Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. Save your daughters and educate your daughters only at the level of slogan. So you will just go and say that, but when it comes to the practical reality, it just sounds a very hollow slogan only. So then the last paragraph is pretty interesting actually. So he says that we must also never forget that the journalist who was murdered was a woman. In this country, it is with great difficulty that a few women reach that position from where they, with the keenness of their views, can show a mirror to society and to the government. For Gauri to reach that point after a long battle and for her to be cut down at that point was naturally an immense waste of her talent. So this was the chapter, the National Project for Installing Fear. At last, he says that we also need to understand the deadly patterns of fear and violence and hate that are being woven around all of us, for they are what Gauri Lankesh fell prey to, a brave journalist. So yeah, that is the thing with this kind of fake news, fake propaganda. The ones who are actually losing anything are the people, the public, like the general masses, because their voice is drowning, because their issues that quite really affects them is completely out of the picture. It somehow has disappeared from the public discourse itself. No debate about that, just some false propaganda going on all around. So he says it's something that needs to be given some serious thought. So we will continue it tomorrow. Till then, thanks for watching and stay tuned.